In that, I said about, okay, this is what we have seen in the first workshop. I said about what is API is and what is a web application is and what is a web service is. Okay, I said about what is web service. Okay, now all these things what we have seen in the previous workshop. Okay, now is it my voice is clear, right? Okay, you increase your volume. Vision. For your point, you increase your volume. Mine is 100%. Okay, now is it clear? Remaining students, is it clear? Yes. Okay. So this is what we have seen in the previous workshop. I said about what is Django, what is Flask, what is FastAPI. Okay. And we have seen what is a full stack framework and what is a micro framework. And even I said about what is FastAPI and what are the key features. And after that, I said about how to develop fast APIs. Okay, and how to develop an API by using fast API. Even I explained that a simple application we have seen and how to test it. Even we have seen. Okay, so these are the things what we have seen in the previous class. Now in this session, we'll talk about how to communicate with database. Now what we are talking about is fast API and database communication, fast API and database communication, right? Yes. Yeah. You can get the recording. It is already there in YouTube. Okay. So fast API with the database communication. So I said what is API is? API stands for application programming interface. API stands for application programming interface. So it is a communication between two applications. Okay. Okay. So now sometimes this API required to store data within the database or it required to read the data from where database. For example, you are developing an API for a bank. Okay. For example, you are developing an API for a bank. Suppose you are developing API for a bank. So assume that this is your mobile application. So this is your mobile application, right? And you are developing API. This API is communicate with the database. For example, you want to find the balance. You want to find the balance. Now this is a API which get the balance from where database. Okay, now this API communicate with what here DB. So that is nothing but database. Okay, so you're developing a web service and this web API is called by mobile application. And what this mobile application is doing is now here in mobile application, this application want to do certain operations like checking balance. For example, if you see Google Pay or PhonePe, so where you want to check the balance. Now what this API is doing is, this API is trying to get the balance from the database. Again, the same way you are trying to deposit or you are trying to transfer the funds from one account to what another account. Then API, this API, what it is doing it is communicating with what database. It is communicating with the database. Okay. Then in this session, we will be learning how this API communicate with what database. And here you have a different databases. Okay, like you have a different database softwares, like you have Oracle database, MySQL database, okay, SQL Server, SQLite, okay, MongoDB, which is NoSQL database. You find various databases provided by various software vendors. Okay, then in this example, in this workshop, I'm trying to tell you how to communicate with one database. If you communicate with one database, remaining thing will be the same because always you develop APIs independent of what databases. You have to change only the protocol to which database you want to communicate. You have to change only protocol or you have to change only URL, but everything will be the same. But when it comes to Python, by default, Python come up with one database, default database. Can you name the default database comes with the Python? Can you name the default database which comes with the Python? So what is the name of the database? SQLite. 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 SQLite is a default database. SQLite is a default database which comes with the yes Python. Yes, not PostgreSQL here. SQLite. What is the database name is? SQLite is a database name that comes with the SQLite is a database that comes with the Python software. Okay. So default database it provides is SQLite. Okay. Now here I'll tell you how to communicate with the SQLite database. Okay. Yes, how to perform this CRUD operations using SQLite. I think you understood. Okay. For example, you have a book my show, right? Book my show. You know book my show, right? You know book my show. Huh? You know book my show? Yes or no? Hmm. Book my show. What it is? How many ways can you book the tickets? Okay. You can book the tickets from browser. You can book the tickets from the browser. Yes or no? You can book the tickets from the browser. Okay. Here you can write book my show. Okay. You can book the tickets from the browser. Now, anything you open in the browser, so that is called as which application? Anything you open in the browser, that is called which application? Which application? Anything you open in the browser is called which application? Web application. This is called which application? Web application. Anything you open in the browser is called which application? Web application. But even you can also book the tickets. Even you can also book the tickets by downloading app. What app you download? Book My Show app from Play Store. Okay, you may download from Play Store, App Store, Play Store or App Store. Okay, from different mobiles, OS, right? But what is a Book My Show app? App is which application here? It is which application here? Mobile application. This is which application? Mobile application. So mobile application is using the services of which application? Web application. But is it using all the services or some of the services? Some of the services like reservation and cancellation. Now this kind of some services used by which application? Mobile application. Right now, how mobile application communicate with the web application? For that, you develop some APIs. What do you develop? Some APIs or you develop some endpoints. You develop some APIs or endpoints that communicate with which application? Web application. Understood, right? So this API is not only this API is this API communicate with what a database. This API is maybe communicate directly with the database, or this API may communicate with what web application, and that web application may communicate with what database. Okay, but you may develop sometimes you may develop APIs that communicate directly with what database. Then how fast API communicate with a database? How fast API communicate with the database? Fast API communicate with the database. How fast API communicate with database? How it communicate? How fast API communicate with the database? Okay, now tell me how fast API communicate with the database. In order to communicate with a database, okay, you can communicate with a database in two ways. Okay, one is using SQL, and generally a database understand SQL. Okay, using ORM tools, using ORM, object relational mapping. So ORM is SQL independent. ORM is what SQL independent means. You can write the code by using object oriented without using which statements, SQL statements, and generating of SQL statements is taken care by which tool? ORM. Means can you communicate with a database without SQL? Yes. Can you communicate with a database without SQL? Yes. By using object oriented relational mapping. Object oriented relational mapping, that is called ORM. But ORM, what it will do is it converts whatever you write in object oriented into equivalent with statements, SQL statements. Means as a developer, you don't require to know about which statements, SQL statements. But it is better to know SQL statements before learning which one or okay. So whenever you talk about database language, database understandable language is only one. That is SQL, which is stands for structured query language, and which consists of lot of commands like inserting, updating, deleting. All these are the commands provided by which one? SQL. Okay, so now most of the times when you're working with the web applications or web APIs, you don't use SQL statements. If you are using SQL statements, your database, I mean your API becomes database dependent because the syntax of SQL statements might be changes from one database to another database. Command might be the same. For example, in one database, you may write select star from EMP. In another database, you may write select all from EMP. Now the command is the same, but the command is the same. See, select star from EMP and select all from EMP. Command is the same, but syntax is what here? Different. Assume that this is a syntax which is used in one database, and this is a syntax used in another database. Now, if I'm writing the code by using select star from EMP that work with only one database, but doesn't work with another database. If I change my database, then I should do changes in what? SQL statement. So that becomes maintaining your code becomes what? Complex. It means whenever you do changes in, whenever there is a change in database, you need to do changes in what? SQL statements. That becomes very complex. To avoid that, you want to develop an SQL statement or you want to develop an API independent of databases, then you are using one tool. And what is the tool you are using? ORM, that is object relational mapping. So whenever you install the FastAPI, the FastAPI doesn't provide any ORM. It doesn't provide on any ORM tool. For example, if you are working with DRF, that is Django REST framework, okay, this provide an ORM tool. This provide what? ORM. It provide by default ORM. Django ORM it is provided because it is a full stack. But when it comes to the fast API, it doesn't provide any ORM tool. So you have to install one ORM tool called SQL Alchemy. Okay, you have to install one tool, and what is the name of the tool is SQL Alchemy. It is a ORM tool, and it is a what do you call it as library which is used to communicate with what database. What is SQL Alchemy? Already I said this in one workshop. So this is called which tool here? ORM tool. SQL Alchemy is a ORM tool, and this is used to communicate with various databases. It means you can develop applications independent of what databases. So in order to communicate with the database, first what you have to do is you have to install SQL Alchemy. Already we install FastAPI, and you need to install SQL Alchemy. Okay, this is ORM tool which is used to communicate with the database. So now we are trying to develop it without using. So we are trying to develop it without using SQL statements. Let SQL statement generated by which tool? ORM tool. Let SQL statements generated by ORM tool. You are not generating any. You are not writing any SQL statements. The SQL statements are written by which tool? ORM tool. Online students, are you able to understand what we are doing it? What we are doing, we are communicating with what? Database. What we are doing, we are communicating with, yes. What we are doing, we are communicating with the database. Okay, we are communicating with the database. Okay, yes. Why we require a database? Tell me here. Why we require a database? Why we require a database? To store data and to retrieve and perform certain operations. Okay, because every application required to store data permanently. Okay, every application required to store data permanently. Yes. So where you store this data permanently? By using database applications, right? Okay. So let us see how to perform CRUD operations here. Okay, so this is the CRUD operations which I'm doing on employee. CRUD operations are nothing but CRUD or CRUD operations, which is nothing but inserting, retrieving, updating, and what? Deleting. Which is nothing but inserting, retrieving, updating, and deleting. Okay. So we'll be seeing how to insert the data, how to retrieve the data, how to update the data, and how to delete the data. Okay. So first you create one folder, but I said no, there is no structure of this. You can create one folder and create different modules within that folder. Okay, create different modules within that folder. So I just create one folder here. Okay, now this is a folder I'm creating. So folder name can be anything. So my project folder name is employee CRUD. Select the folder and open it. Okay. So after that, you need to see that now it is installed. FastAPI is installed. In the last class, I said how to install the FastAPI. Okay. And even I said how to install the server also. Now you have to install pip install. Okay. Now I try to list all the APIs which are installed, libraries. Now here there is one library. What is the name of this is SQL Alchemy. So here what is the name of this is SQL Alchemy, which is already installed. You have to install this. Pip install. Okay, pip install. What is that? SQL Alchemy. So what is this? What is SQL alchemy is? Tell me here, what is SQL alchemy? What is SQL alchemy here? ORM tool. Okay. What is SQL alchemy is a tool. It is a SQL alchemy is a tool, right? ORM tool. It is what it is. It is a ORM tool, right? Which you are using it to communicate with what database. Okay. So pip install SQL alchemy, which is already sorry. Pip install SQL alchemy, which is already installed. You don't require to install again. Okay, it is already here. This requirement is already there. It is already installed. Okay, it is a ORM tool to communicate with the database. Okay, right? So first thing, in order to communicate with the database, okay, if you want to communicate with database, yeah, you can install it like requirement.txt. You can use it. Okay, you can use requirements.txt. Okay, and then you can put all the required dependencies, right? Now, in order to communicate with, see here, in order to communicate with a database, what do you have to do it? Now, you have to create first a database. First, you have to create a database. Okay. So I'm using SQLite. I'm using SQLite. Dear students, I'm using SQLite. What is the database I'm using? SQLite. Dear students, I'm using SQLite database. Okay, that is a default SQLite. That is a default database which comes with the Python. Okay. Now this is a database. Now this is your API. Yes. It doesn't require much space and all the things, right? Yes. You don't require networking and all the things. Yes. So the person who's trying to now this is API. This is a API now. This is your API. You're developing an API using which abstracts? Using which framework? FastAPI. You're developing an API by using which framework? FastAPI. Now, how this API communicate with the database? For that, here we are using one mediator. And what is a mediator here is or okay, we are using ORM. We are using ORM. This is Alchemy is a ORM. Now using this ORM, you are trying to perform certain operations on this database. Using this ORM, you are trying to perform operations on the database, right? Okay, this one you understood, right? Okay. Now how you are developing API using Fast API framework. And here we are using ORM tool SQL Alchemy to communicate with the database. Okay, right? All right, students, please try to answer. Is it this is clear? Are you writing SQL statements directly in the program? No, you're not writing SQL statements. You are not writing SQL statements. Okay. Yeah. The problem with writing SQL queries is Kamal Yadav. The problem with SQL statements is it becomes your API becomes database dependent. Okay. your your API becomes database dependent. Okay. Yes. And you face a lot of problems, security issues, like all the things you can come across when you're trying to write it by using what do you call it as hard coding SQL statements. Okay. Because SQL statements, the syntax is not same for all databases. It might be changes from one database to another, right? So there's no hard coding here. Okay. So now what I'm doing first is, what are the basic steps to work with this is, now first thing is you have to create a models. Okay, you have to create models.py. Okay, you have to create models.py. Okay, this is models.py. So what is a model? Generally, what is a model in ORM is, a model represent table. We have not created any table, right? A model represent table because we are trying to communicate with the database using object-oriented programming. We are communicating with the database using object-oriented programming. A class represent table. A class instances is what? Rows. A class represent table and class instances means objects are called rows. Okay. So class is a table. Class, a model represent table and model instances are what? Rows. A model represents a table and model instances are what? Rows. Remember this. A model represent table and model instances are what? Rows. A model represents table and model instances are rows. Now here you are creating one table. Yeah, let me explain this. You are creating a table. How you are creating a table is, now SQL Alchemy has provided some column integer, string and float. Now here, what is the name of the class is employee. What is the name of the class is employee. And in the database, I want to create a table with some name. And here you can use one magic variable. And what is the name of that magic variable is table. And what is the name of the table I used here? Employees. Now what employee is having ID? And ID is a column. ID is which type here? Column. An integer and primary key is a true and indexing is done. And you are saying name is a column. Name is which type? A column type. And what is a column is string. Nullable is a false. Means compulsory you have to enter. I'll tell you. I'll tell you that. Email is again column and it is of which type? String type. Okay, unique, true, index is true and nullable is false. Okay, now email must be a unique. Okay, and you are creating index so that searching becomes what? Efficient. Age is a column of which type? Integer. And department is a column of which type? String. And salary is a column of which type? Float. So column itself is a type and you are defining this column is which type? Integer and primary key is a true. And name is a column of which type here? String. And nullable is false. And email is a column of string, unique equal to true. And age is a column of which type? Integer. And department is a column of which type? String. And salary is a column of which type? Float. But how you are developing this class? A class or a model? Employee is a class. Employee is a class or employee is a model. Model means it should inherit properties of one class. It should inherit the properties of one class. And what is the name of the class is here? Base. What is the name of the class is a base. Now here you have to create one module. Here you have to create one module called database.py. Create one module. Okay, create one module called database.py. Database.py. Now why this database.py? Where you need to establish connection to a database. You have to create a database. You have to create a table. Now all these things you configure in what? Database.py. Now in database.py, CM, suppose if I'm not writing employee, if I'm writing only employee, what is employee? Only a class. Employee is a class, but employee actually it is a model. Employee is a model, then it should inherit all the properties of which one? Model. It should inherit all the properties of table. It should inherit all the properties of a table. But it is inheriting all the properties of a table by inheriting one class. And what is the name of the class here? Base class. And this base class is having all the properties of which one? Model. It is having all the properties of model. Now in database.py, define database configuration. Here you define the database configuration. In database.py, you define the database configuration. Define the database configuration. Now you are trying to import SQL Alchemy, import create engine, SQL Alchemy dot extension dot declarative, import declarative base, and from SQL Alchemy dot ORM import session maker. Okay, let me tell you about this. First, you have to create, you have to define the SQL database, SQLite database, and this is a predefined variable name. And what is the name of this variable is SQL Alchemy underscore database underscore URL, means you are trying to create one database. And what is the name of the database you are creating? Employee DB. You are creating one database called which one? Employee DB, where you are creating in current folder, where you are creating in current folder, and you are using three slashes. Okay, three slashes means I cannot write one slash, right? If I want to write one slash, I have to use two slashes. Now two slashes indicates what here? One slash means I want to define like this: HTTP slash and slash. If I want two slashes, then I have to use three slashes, because two slashes indicates one slash and I added one more slash. Now this is a syntax of URL. So that's the reason you are trying to use a protocol. And what is the name of this protocol here? SQLite, and slash and slash, and where you are creating this database in the current folder where your program is exists. Dot means what? Current directory. What is dot indicates here? Current directory. What is dot indicates here? Current directory. Means what is the current folder in which it is creating? Employee CRUD. That is a folder in which it will create. It will create one database. And what is the name of the database? Employee.db. Employee.db is the name of the database. Anything you can use it. Okay, then using this, you need to create. Using this, you need to create an engine. See here, create engine. You are using create engine. What is the name of the function here? Create engine. Create engine. Okay, for example, if you want to start the car, what you require? Car must have what? Engine, right? So car should have an engine. Whenever you start the car, what is start? And whenever you start the car, what is start? Car starts or engine start? Whenever you start the car, which one is start? Car start or engine start? Engine. Engine start. That is nothing but this create engine is used to establish connection to a database. This create engine is used to establish connection to a database. Then in order to establish connection to a database, what it required? URL. In order to establish connection to a database, what it required? URL. This is URL. This is nothing but URL. It required a database URL. What it required? Database URL. Okay. And after that, you are trying to define some connection arguments. After that, you are trying to define some connection arguments. Okay, you are trying to define some connection arguments. You have a connection arguments, right? In this connection arguments, You are trying to say check same thread is a false, means you want to handle this connections. You want to use, whether you want to use one thread or whether you want to use multiple threads, that you can define it by using check same thread is false. That is a connection argument, but this connection argument is optional. This connection argument is what here? Optional. If you want, you can use it. Otherwise, no. Right? So it means you are using one thread or multiple threads can be defined by using connect argument. Okay? Yes. Then after that, you are trying to use session maker. You are trying to use what here? Session maker. Now, suppose, I think you know when you are working with a Python, right? When you are working with a Python, how you do it generally? What are the basic steps to communicate with a database in Python? Tell me here. What is the first step? First step is you establish connection to what? Database. This is what you learn in your regular class, right? Then after establishing connection to a database, then how you send SQL statements? Tell me how you send SQL statements. How you send SQL statement after establishing connection? How you send SQL statements? How you send SQL statement? Oh, so first thing is establish connection to a database, right? First thing is establish connection to a database. After establishing connection to a database, you create which object? Cursor object. What do you do it? You create a cursor object, not connection.exit. You create which object? Cursor object. And this cursor object, using this cursor object, you execute SQL statements, right? So establishing connection to a database, yeah, establishing connection to a database is nothing but creating a session. Okay, establishing connection to a database is nothing but creating what? Session. It means whatever SQL statements you execute, right? All the SQL statements get executed within the session. So creating connection is nothing but creating one session. Creating connection is nothing but creating one session. Creating connection is nothing but creating one session. Okay. Now it means it will create some workspace at the database so that whenever you execute SQL statements, that SQL statements get executed within session. So that after executing all the statements, what do you do it? Either you commit, either you commit, or what do you do it? Rollback. Why you are saying commit rollback? Because when you say commit, the changes which are done within the session that will be stored in the database. When you say rollback, whatever changes done in the session will be rollback. Means it will not do on the database. So creating a session, establishing connection is nothing but creating one session. Now, how you get a session from the session pool is by using session maker. Now, this is a session maker here. This returns which object? Session object. This returns which object? Session object. And you are saying auto commit is false, auto flush is false, and bind with what engine? This engine is nothing but your database engine. And what is your database engine is SQLite. Okay. What is your database engine is SQLite. Then after that, yes, up to this you understood these three steps. Huh? What is the first one is creating URL, and second one is creating connection, and then next one is you are returning a session by using session maker. You are returning a session by using session maker, right? Then after that you are saying base equal to declarative base. You are saying base equal to declarative base. So what is the meaning of this declarative basis? Okay. Yeah, these two steps are clear. Huh? SQL database URL and create engine and session maker. Is it this is clear? Online students, declarative base is there. There is a function called declarative base. What is declarative basis? Now you want to develop. Yeah, it is same for all the databases. Sayed, Saida. Okay, it is same for all the databases. Now what is a declarative basis? Now you required now this is a function. You required a class. You required you required a class, base class. What do you required? A base class. Base is nothing but parent class, or you required a base class. You required a base class, or you required a parent class for declaring class definitions. Okay, it is a base class for creating what models. It is a base class for creating what your models. Now see here, base. Now here, this is a model employee inherited from what? Base class. And what is declarative basis? Now declarative base is a function. It is a function and that returns a base class for declarative class definitions. For declarative class definitions, it returns one base class. And this base class serves as a foundation, or it is a starting point for developing which one or a models. For that, you are using declarative base. Like when you are working with like D Django, you'll be using model directly. But here you have to use one class. What is the name of the class is base. Okay, right? So this is database configuration. In database.py, you create two things. One is you create a session and you create a base class for creating models. You create a base class for models, right? Okay. Then once this database is defined, once the database, yes, there's two modules you understood. Yes, there's two modules you understood. Now, is it required to write here base equal to declarative base here? You don't require to write here. You can write in models.py also. Okay, you can write directly in models.py also. Here also you can write it. Okay, but you made it as global. You made it as what here global. Okay, you can write in models.py. In database, you can write only two things: engine and the session. Creating engine and creating session. Okay, in models also you can write base. Okay, all right. Then next one is next what we have to do is we have to write a main program. We have to write a main program where, yeah, models. Now this is creating a table. And after that, you have to create one more module called schemas.py. You have to create one more module. What is the name of this module is schemas.py. You have to create one more module. Create another module. Okay, I just use schemas one dot. Okay, I just give the name as like this. What happened here? Schemas.py. Okay, I create one more module, and what is the name of the module is schemas.py. So why we require this schemas.py is, okay, this required, okay, whenever you are talking about communication of two applications, okay, whenever you are talking about communication between two applications, now here, now suppose this is a client application. The client is trying to send a data in which format? JSON format. Is trying to send data in which format? JSON format to API. Our client is talking to the API in which format? JSON format. Then it should convert this JSON into what? Model instance. Then again, you should convert this model instance into what? JSON. How this conversion is done? Like if you are working with Django REST framework, you'll be using serializers. If you are working with DRF, you are using what? Serializers. You are using serializers, but when it comes to this, you are not using serializers here, but rather than serializers, you are using Pydantic. Okay, so you are using in the place of serializer, you are using Pydantic. So in the place of serializer, here, in the place of serializer, what you are using? Pydantic. So you need to install this. If it's not installed, you have to install Pydantic. So what is the use of this Pydantic is, yes, it's for data validation and data serialization and deserialization. Data validation and data serialization and what? Deserialization is nothing but converting model instances into JSON and JSON into what? Python objects and Python objects into JSON to model. So this conversion you can do it by using which one? Pydantic. Okay, it is for serialization and what? DC. So if you want to perform any validations, you can write here. Employee create, you can do validations. Employee update, you can do validations. Okay, employee response. Okay, you are saying you are trying to validate integer class configuration ORM mode equal to what? True. Means it is trying to convert a response into which type? JSON type by using this. Okay. Now, why you are writing this employee base model is, okay, for every model you are creating one serializer. So that is mapping a model with what? Python object, and that Python object to JSON, that conversion, you do it by using what do you call it as Pydantic, which is nothing but data serialization and deserialization. Yes. So is it this is clear? Okay, is it this is clear why we are using Pydantic? It is used for serializing and what? Deserialization. Okay, it's nothing but type conversion, that is converting one type to what? Another type. Okay, can be done by using Pydantic. Okay, like in when you're working with Django REST framework, you'll be using serializers, but here you're not using serializers. What you're using is you are using Pydantic. Okay, so it is for converting, okay, model instances into Python type and Python to model instances. Now that conversions you can do it by using this Pydantic. Okay, all right. Now there is employee create, employee update, and employee response. Now finally you have to write the main program. So that is nothing but main.py. So this is a main.py. So where you are trying to perform certain operations. Before doing this, first thing what you have to do is you have to create, yes, anything is there, you put in chart window, please. Any questions you want to ask, you put in chart window. Okay, you understood model. Model represent table. Model represent what? Table. And schema represent serialization and deserialization. And database represent database configuration. Database represent database configuration. Okay. So model represent what? Table. And schema represents serializations and validators. And database represent database configuration. Okay. Right. So there is a main.py. Yes, if database is already exists, you may get errors. Chavan. Okay, Pratap. Yes, you may get errors. Okay. So first thing is you have to create tables, right? First thing is you have to create tables. You have to create a table. Then how to create a tables? Where if you are working with Django, you'll say make migrations, migrate. But here you don't use any make migrations and migrate. You're just writing models dot. Models is a module and base is a class. And you are saying metadata. Metadata dot create all and bind equal to database dot engine. Now this is creating tables. This is for creating tables here. In models, there is a base, and base represent a base class for defining a model, base class for defining the model, and dot meta create all. So metadata is nothing but here. What is a meta is you are providing information about these models. So metadata is nothing but here metadata represent your model. And what is your model is employee. What is your model is employee. Okay. And you are creating this table in the database. And database means you have to establish connection. You have to use a database connection or you have to use a database. And what is your database name is? What your database name is? Your database name is what here? Engine. Okay. What is your database is here? Engine, right? So you are creating table within the database by writing this statement. So models dot base dot metadata dot create all and bind with which database employees dot db database that represent database dot engine. Database is a module name and within the database what is engine is? This engine is nothing but connection. This engine is nothing but connection. What is engine is? Connection. Okay. So you are creating tables in that database. The next step is after that you have to create a application, FastAPI application. Now title is not compulsory. Title is not compulsory, right? I created FastAPI application. Title is not compulsory. Okay. So I created application, FastAPI application. Then next you have to create a session, database dependent session. Okay. Now here I write here simple function by saying db.database dot session local database dot see a database dot session local database dot session local see a database dot session local. When you say database dot session local, now that returns a database session. And this is nothing but see any function which contain yield. What it is called? Any function which contain yield is called which one? Generator function. It is which function? Generator function and that returns iterator. Generator function that returns what? Iterator. So it returns a database session for that user. You can directly use. Okay. But whenever you want a database connection or database session, you just call this. You create an object of this iterator that returns what? Database session. Right. Now once this is done, now next is you have to create employee. You have to create what? Employee. Employee you have to create. So these are various functions you are writing it. So create employee. Now there is a function here and what is the name of that function is create employee. Create employee and you are trying to define the URL and what is the URL is employees and response model schema dot employee response schemas dot employee response schema dot employee response means you are sending a response in which format? JSON format and that you are converting into which format? that you are converting into which format? Okay, that you are converting into which format? Which format? Employee base. You are converting into which format? Employee base. Okay, means you are converting into a model instance. You are converting into what? Model instance. See here. Response model equal to schemas dot employee response. But actually you are sending in which format? JSON format. And that JSON you are converting into which format? Employee model format by using employee response. Okay. Then you are saying create employee. So schemas dot employee create. Employee create. Now schemas dot employee create. Employee is the name of the argument. Employee is the name of the argument, and DB is also name of the argument. Employee is the name of the argument, and DB is also name of the argument. An employee is an argument of which type of schemas dot employee create, and DB is which type here? Session. This is type int. What is this called as a type int? This is called a type int. What is this called as here? Type hint. Okay, if you don't write this also no problem. Okay, yes. Which employee you want to create, right? Employee. db.query model.employee.filter model.employee.email double equal to employee.email dot first. Means you are checking whether this email ID is already exist or not. If the employee ID is already exists here, db.query, you are trying to query all the data, but you don't want to query all the data. You want to check only, you want to read only the employees whose email ID is equal to existing employee email ID. Okay, if it is equal, you are raising an error. What is that error is? HTTP exception, and you are saying employee already registered. Employee already registered. Employee already registered. You just write employee already registered. Otherwise, you are creating a model instance by reading all employee data, which is dictionary, and db.add new employee object, and db.commit, and you are saying db.refresh new employee and return new employee. Right? db.refresh new employee and return the new employee, but this new employee is of which type? JSON type. Now here you are trying to use a method called refresh. Here you are trying to use a method called what? Refresh. Okay. Now you can see the selected attribute will first expire and then use expiry. Then select statement will be issued to the database to refresh column oriented attributes with the current values available in the current transaction. Now writing this is not compulsory. Suppose if any changes are done, it will try to refresh it. Okay, in the session and return that data by saying return new employee. So very simple. Now create employee means now you are sending which data? Employees data. Now employee, and then DB is nothing but connection. DB is nothing but what? Connection. DB is nothing but connection. Okay. Yes. DB is a connection, and where you are saying session equal to DB. Okay. Session equal to depends. Get to DB. That is nothing but it will return the database connection. Okay. That is nothing but DB. Okay, now this is a default. What is the default is get a DB means it returns the database connection. So why yield means it will return, it is a generator, it returns what? One one connection or one session. It returns one connection or one session. Okay, so this is creating employee. This is creating employee. And if you want to read all the employees, you can just use this. If you want to read all the employees, you can use this. Read employees. What is depends function is here. Okay, session equal to depends. What is the name of the function is depends. Okay, name of the function is what here? Depends. Depends is the name of the function, and it's a predefined function. And this predefined function is available in this module called FastAPI. And what is depends is, okay, depends is a function that returns Which one session object means now this function has to be called and this function returns. This function returns a DB object means it returns the session object and how to iterate. If I say get a DB, what it do? It will just return the iterator object. And how can I get the object? How can I get the object? What I mean to tell you is how can I get the object? For example, if you want to iterate, okay, if you want to iterate from iterable, what do you do it? Okay, if you want to iterate, what do you do it? You iterate it by calling which function? Next function. Okay, now here we are using depends. Depends why we are using is we need to configure what we have to configure database, right? We need to configure database. Okay, we need to configure database. Okay, you need to configure database. How you configure database? How you inject? How this is nothing but dependency injection. Generally, this depends is nothing but dependency injection. Dependency injection means automatically should configure all the things, right? How it will configure all the things automatically by using what? Depends. What is the name of the function is depends. Okay, dependency injection is nothing but now you are trying to automatically configure all the things belongs to your FastAPI application by just calling the function called depend. By just calling the function called which one? Depend. You are calling one function called depend. Okay. I think you understood depends function is nothing but dependency injection. It is nothing but dependency injection that will resolve all the things required for doing which operations, all the things required to perform which operations, database operations, all the dependencies, all the dependencies required to perform database operations. Okay, right? So that is done by using which one here? Depends. It is nothing but, yes. So not only that, when you say get to DB is there, no? What is a get to DB is a function, right? You are saying DB dot query model dot employee. Yes. This is how you are creating employee. And this is a dictionary. Employees is what here? Dictionary. And you are unpacking the dictionary by using star star. You are unpacking the dictionary by using what here? Star star. You are unpacking the dictionary by using star and star. Now this is reading single employee. Single employee means you have to use filter function. If you want to read all the employees, you are saying query dot models dot employee dot all. Okay. Yes. Not each time. This is called only one time, right? Not each time. This is called only one time. Not each time. Because yes. Why? Because once this operation is done, you are closing it. Once see the client may do different operations, right? So connection is costly. It requires some space at server side, right? So that's the reason you have to close it. That's the reason you have to close the connection. If you don't close the connection, okay, if you don't close the connection, what will happen? Suppose if you don't close this connection, what will happen? So whenever you send a request to each API endpoint, each endpoint create connection is open, get employee connection is open, get employee, okay, connection is open, get employees, get employee, connection is open. So like that, it will open how many connections? So many connections, right? So that might take some space at which side server side. So to avoid that, once you perform the operation, you are trying to close the connection by saying db dot close, by using db dot close. So that closes what here? Connection. db.close, that closes the connection. Okay, right? So because it occupies a lot of space. Now this is employee db dot query models dot employee dot filter models dot employee dot id equal to employee id dot first. Okay, right? Now employee id you are sending as a path parameter. Okay, and this is updating employee. Okay, this is updating employee. Same. You are saying update employee. You are sending employee id and employee data also you are sending. Now db.query.models.employee filter, you are just getting one first employee. If that employee is not exist, you are saying employee not found. Otherwise, you are replacing it. Otherwise, you are replacing it by saying set attribute employees key comma value. Right? Commit the and refresh the changes. This is for replacement. And if you want to delete an employee, you are deleting an employee by using delete. Okay, here you are just using set attribute. Now set attribute employee and there is a key and value. Employee is the object. Employee is the object and key is nothing but column name and value of that column. Value of that column, right? And delete employee, you are first getting the employee details. And if the employee is not available, you are saying employee not found. Otherwise, you delete it. Now, see here you have a first method is there, no? First method is there. Why first method you are using? See, when you are saying filter, the filter may return either one or more than one instance. Yes, it may return one or more than one. The filter may return one or more than one. Suppose if it is okay, if it is multiple, if it is multiple, okay, if it is multiple, right? If you have a multiple, then how can you get? If it is multiple, how can you get first record? Understood? Okay. How can you get the first record? Understood? For example, are getting or not? You query it. In query, you have a different methods. Okay. In when you're querying it, you have a different methods. Like you have a all. All means you'll get all the rows. All means you'll get all the rows. Okay, you'll get all the rows, but this returns only first row, which match with the first one. You have a first like in Python, you'll use what do you call it as get many, fetch one, fetch many, fetch all. Yes, you have fetch one, fetch many, and fetch all. Now this is fetch one. First is just like fetch one. What is first is fetch one, just like fetch one. Return the first result. Okay, return the first result. And that you are deleting it by saying db dot delete an employee, right? That's all. These are CRUD functions. Then run the server. Okay, run the server. What is the name of the module is main app hyphen reload. If any errors are there, it will show you here. Now here you find some errors. What is the error is? So where we created here in database. In models. So it has become recursive, right? So 1 minute. No, it has to be run. You have to install in the server. Who will run this API server, right? You have to install in the server. You have to install in the server, right? Okay, right? So here our package name is from dot import model schemas and database. So we imported everything. Main.py. Oh, you can directly say import. It's not a package, right? It's not a package. So models from database. So dot is not required here. So we have not installed. Pip install. So because these are validators. So in the model, we are using You have not installed this. Yeah, this code I'll send it. We have to install Pydantic. It's already there, it seems. It's already installed, right? Email str. Yes. Yeah, this is email is installed. Okay, now you have to install this email string. Now that validator has to be installed like this. And after that, run the server. Yes. Now database is created here. Employee.db. Now this is your database which is created. Okay. Now you write a client program. What you do is you write a client program here. I'm writing one separate in ideally. You can write in VS Code also. Now this is a client program which communicate with the database. Okay, now this is the client program. So this is a client app. So here I've written number of functions for inserting, updating, deleting. Okay. So here I'm writing this code. If the choice is one, so this is how you are trying to read during runtime. Anyway, this is a base URL and there is a function called create employee where you are trying to input name, email, age, department and salary. And this is in dictionary and dictionary you are converting into what? JSON. And these are endpoints. These are what? Endpoints. If the response status code is 200, you are saying employee created successfully and you are printing JSON and get all employees and you are trying to get all the employee details. Okay. Yeah, you can use a browser also, Kamal. You can use browser also. But here I write separate program. Okay. You can use Swagger. Okay. You can use Swagger and you can test it. Yes. So this is for updating employee. Yes. So this is for testing by sending data to the different endpoints. Run the module. Okay, run the module. So when you run this, now first step is creating employee name. So I try to employee name, email. Okay, I try to input email. Okay, then age of the employee, department number, and then salary, right? So there is an error here. Just check the error here. Yes. So what we did, we install request. Yes. Request dot. We'll just check request is installed or not. Okay. Where it is installed in 3.13. Department should be a stringer. String only, right? Oh, so here we are sending the data and here we are getting a response. We'll just check it the server side. So models.employee argument after star star must be mapping, not employee create. In which module is main.py. So what you are trying to do is you are trying to create. Okay, you are trying to create an employee. So this is create employee. Oh, star employee dot. We are converting this into dictionary. It's a deprecated, but still we are using it. So we are sending employee name, email ID, some age and department and salary. Okay. Now the employee is created. See here, employee created successfully. Okay, we converted into dictionary, right? Now this employee is created and you can see second option is for reading all the employees, but there is only one employee. So third one is getting one employee, ID is one. Now you can see this is one employee. And if you want to update the employee, enter the employee ID. And if you want to update a name, I update the name, email, okay, email and age of the person and even department and even I want to update salary. Here also we have to do the same thing. Where is that? Okay, we have to use items. Key comma value employee dot items items employee data dot items. So items which returns the dictionary. Now this is also updating employee. You are writing here, okay, employee dictionary dot. So this is dictionary dot items. Okay. Now this is for updating. because we should convert that model instance into a dictionary. Now, fourth one is for updating employee ID 1. This is name. Okay, email ID. Okay, and age of the employee and department number. And this is a salary. Again, there is an error. So dictionary dot items. So some mistakes are there, but this code I'll be uploading in my Telegram. You can just see that. Okay, now this is employee name and yes, and age of the employee, department, and this is a salary. Now it is updated. You can see that get all employees. Now it is updated. And 5 is for delete. One employee is there. Now deleted. 2 means no employees. Okay. Now 6 is for exit. Okay, right? So this is how you are trying to do operations. Okay. Now these are nothing but performing which operations here? CRUD operations. You're doing some CRUD operations on the database. Okay, now. Yes. Kamal Yadav, all other students are there or not? Yes. Now this is doing some CRUD operations. Okay. 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 Now this code I'll be uploading in my Telegram. Now just try to see in my Telegram. This code, everything I'll upload it. Just see in the Telegram. Okay, na? Right. But anyway, I've just given I've just given like how to work with Fast API. Because as a Python developer, you should know how to build APIs by using multiple frameworks, right? How to build APIs using multiple frameworks, that is very important. So because of that, I've given some idea about like how to develop not only using DRF, okay, Django REST framework, even you can develop it by using even you can develop it using Fast API. Now this is my Telegram. Please join this Telegram. Sorry, code with Satish Gupta. This is my Telegram. Please join in this Telegram. Okay. Yes. Now this is very simple. Using ORM is very simple. Okay. Yes. ORM is more easy. Don't do it using raw SQL statements. You should not use it. Kamal. Yes. Raw SQL statement should not be used. Right. Now this is my Telegram. Okay. This code I'll be uploading in my Telegram. Okay. So just check the code in my Telegram and this even this is also this is also there in YouTube and you can just see again in YouTube first video and second video. Yes, I shared already. It is there in YouTube. Grishma, it is there in YouTube. ORM is more secured and faster. Okay, right? Thank you. Now in the next week we'll see more about this. Like we'll have YouTube link means Naresh IT. Go to Naresh IT channel, Naresh IT. Just open YouTube and type Naresh IT. You'll get Naresh IT channel, Narsimha Murthy, right? And we'll have another workshop in the next week. Next Sunday, we'll have another workshop with another topic. Okay, right? Okay, na? Okay, right? Okay, thank you. We'll see you in the next workshop. I hope this workshop is very useful. Might be, right? Okay, this workshop is useful, right? Okay, because what I want is I want the student should get knowledge of multiple ways of developing APIs. Okay, right? That is important. Okay, right. Thank you. We'll see you in the next workshop. Right. Thank you. Right. Bye. I'll be uploading this notes. I'll be uploading this in. Yes. Narasimha, my office. I'm writing fast API only. Right. Very good. Might be for you. It might be useful. Right. Okay. Right. Thank you very much for attending this workshop. Right. I'll try to give you more knowledge on fast API or some other framework in the next workshop. Okay, na? Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll see in the next workshop. Right. See, it depends on the company. You cannot say that, okay, you cannot say that, okay, I should use only this and that. Depends on the company, Suraj. You should have a knowledge of multiple. I'm telling you, know, I should have a multiple APIs knowledge. Okay, we need to know all. Yes, because what company asks, we don't know, right? What company asks, we don't know. As a developer, you should have a multiple knowledge. That is very important. You should have a multiple knowledge. That is very important. Okay, not one, right? You should have a multiple knowledge. So you should know how to develop web applications using Flask, how to develop it using Django, and how to develop APIs by using REST APIs by using DRF, Django REST framework, how to develop a REST API using Fast API. Everything you should know it. Okay, don't stick on to one because nowadays they are looking for a person who's all rounder. All rounder means you should have a knowledge of all. And the beautiful thing about Python is if you know from one framework, rest of the things will be the same. Okay, right? The beautiful thing about Python frameworks, web frameworks means all these frameworks follow the same rules and regulations with minimum changes. And that minimum changes, if you know it, you are master in that. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Next session will be there on 12th. Yes. Next session will be on 12th. Okay. This time I'll try to teach you another. Right. Okay. Right. Thank you. Ginger 2 is a template engine. Yes. Yeah. Django, Flask or web frameworks, web application framework, and Fast API is web API framework by using which you develop web services. By using this, you develop web services. Okay, right? Okay, right? Thank you. I'll be uploading these notes in my Telegram. Please join my Telegram. I already given my Telegram ID. Code with Satish Gupta. Right? So keep learning, keep attending workshops regularly so that you get more knowledge. Okay, right? Thank you.